Good evening, everybody. We would like to welcome everyone into our inaugural Home Turf Sports Podcast. I'm Brian Hardy alongside co-host Devin Hardy, and today we're going to be talking about some of our local high school sports from the Pee Dee area. We're going to talk about this last week's games, scores, maybe some stats, and then also we will be previewing the upcoming week's games. Next week we got a big game rolling in Terrell and Marlboro County. Another big game on deck as we go across the state line as Scotland travels up to Richmond County. That'll be a big game as well. Um, yeah, this will be our first one. We're kind of excited to get this thing started. We've been talking about it for a while. We decided let's settle in and get it done. Devin, I want you to let you introduce yourself, and we'll get ready to get into some right into the stats and scores from this week's game after you get ready.
Hey guys, welcome in. This being me and my dad's first ever podcast. We look forward to having a bunch of you subscribe to the podcast week in, week out. Look forward to this week and next week of high school sports and all the way up until December. And we will try to eventually get into college sports covering, but we'll be covering everything from high school football to high school basketball to baseball and these local guys that don't get seen out here a lot. It's got good hidden talent that might not be D1 caliber players, but still can play at the next level for some teams. But I'll get right into some scores that we had from last night's week zero high school action local. We had South Florence 37, West Florence 6. Aiken went on the road and beat Ainer 27-7. Darlington held their own with Lamar 22-14. We had a little skeezer action. Pee Dee 14, Trinity 12. Carvers Bay got a big commitment, a Gamecock commitment team. Zion Giles, 14, Waccamaw 12. Lake City, 18, Murder Beach 43. Lourdes, 56 over Green Sea, 7. Latta with a little out-of-state action, 42 over East Columbus, 7. Scotland County holds their own with a top 3A team in the PD area of Dillon, 36-33. Marlboro shuts out Lake Marion, 56-6 at home. Wilson 13, Conway 9. Pakistan Wando is postponed for a big major storm in Charleston this week, guys. If you listen in from that area, be safe down there. A lot of rain. Raw goes on the road, beats McBee 48-7. East Clarendon 39, Scott Grant 0. Skeezer upsets the little high school team 14, Heathwood Hall, Hannah Pepsico 0. Mountain View Prep 34, Atlantic Collegiate 0. King Street 24, Georgetown 23. Johnsonville holds their own and beats the Rams of Chesterfield 34-20. Lawrence Christian 35, Dillon Christian 12. Lakeview 26, Marion 13. North Carolina action. Lumberton 24, Fairmont 6. Hoggard 24. St. Paul's 38, Purnell Sweat 22. Uh, my co-host, what you think about some of these scores from last night?
Uh, I think that Scotland and Dillon game was. I know it'd be a pretty good game, but I thought eventually I thought Dillon might probably pull that one out, especially when they got out to a pretty good lead going into the fourth quarter. I think they were up by two scores. We kept getting updates as I was live on the radio at the Marlboro County game. I couldn't really check stats, but we kept getting scores updates from people, and Scotland just kept chipping away and chipping away. I think they scored late, really late, to take the lead with only just a few seconds left in that game. Like I said, that was the biggest surprise to me. What was your biggest surprise of the night, Devin?
I see where they have both teams has a North Carolina Tar Heel commit on their team, which good players going to play good ball at the next level. Zay Robertson from Dillon had 2 or 3 touchdowns from what I am seeing here. And the freshman running back of Scotland had a few touchdowns and a good amount of carries and yards for Scotland. He was in the store last night for the Marlboro County and Lake Marion game. What any takes on that game from last night, week 0?
Yeah, Marlboro they've kind of switched things up. They're now mixing in the wing tee. It's not their primary offense, although they might come out in it to start with it. I think it's just all about matchup. But they do mix that in. They have, I'd say, 4 or 5 different guys with probably double digit carries last night. Probably the number one guy being Trey Haley, who was transferred over in from Darlington. He had a very big night. Watching some of the highlights, man, he made some really highlight runs that just almost made you stand up out of your seat. Got the crowd excited. He was a big time back last night. He had multiple touchdowns. Ray Stone was having a really good night before he went out to an injury. So prayers up for him. Let's hope that's nothing major because I think he was going to be a big part of the offense. We had number 14, Krishan Smith, come in and stepped in after Ray Stone went out. Man, and he had a big night as well. He probably was pushing 100 yards on his own. Um, Also a couple of touchdowns. That he also played big on defense. We also had Tremaine Ashford, number 2 for Marlboro. He had a pretty decent night. Overall, I think Marlboro had a little over 500 yards rushing last night. I mean, 500 yards total offense with 322 of that being on the ground. Man, that offensive line really come out and made a statement. Series of the third quarter, most of the starters were out of the game. Uh,
So what do you look for last night? You seen from the Bulldogs? I know previous years they always been a powerhouse in the 3A and 4A region, and always look the end goal was always a state championship. What do you think it takes for the Bulldogs this year to get back to their previous roots, and what they can do to get to the state championship game?
be honest, man, a big thing that stood out to me, and I kind of alluded to it on the air last night, was that Marlboro's usually they got a lot of talent, a lot of athletes, but they also usually a very heavily penalized team. And last night, kind of surprising, especially early in the season, where you had a lot of the pre-snap penalties and mistakes and stuff like that. Man, to be honest with you, that they really didn't have many of those. I really can't remember a false start or outside on defense. Those pre-snap penalties that drive coaches just drive them nuts. So they did have a couple maybe personal fouls or stuff like that, but really it wasn't anything where it was talking trash or you know trying to fight. It was really just maybe a late hit or somebody just going 100 miles an hour and stuff like that. Maybe a little rough in the passer, but you don't mind those plays where kids are going hard and playing hard. The pre-snap penalties are what drive you crazy. And really, man, they really didn't have any of those last night, which was kind of surprising because the last few Marlboro teams, they have been known to you could get them in some penalty situations. But if they can keep that to a minimum, I really think they're going to be hard to deal with. The defensive line really come out and made a statement. There after the first couple of drives, there really wasn't any running lanes, man. Uh, Big time game from Leighton Chavis, number 20 for Marlboro last night. He was all over the field. I know he caused 2 fumbles himself. He was probably pushing double digit tackles, and anytime you see guys getting up off the pile, usually the last one was at number 20. He earned our defensive player of the game last night. Offensive player of the game, like I mentioned before, was Trey Haley. He had a really big night and really only played about 2 quarters, maybe 2.5 quarters. So they're going to be hard to deal with it if their offensive line continue to play like they did last night. Trey Blakeney, which is a sophomore quarterback, he really didn't have to throw the ball that much last night. So he did throw it deep a few times just to try to keep the defense honest. He hit 1 or 2, but he also missed some guys that were open. If he can dial that in and hit some of those big plays when they're there, that can be a very dangerous offense.
Well, closing out the Marlboro thing, Marlboro, a lot of offense and good on defense. No scores a lot on them. So it sounds like the Bulldogs will have a decent or good defense this year, and maybe would better hold out a lot of points from the opposing team's offense. Um, Going into next week, they'll be on a big rival against the River Rats. Everybody likes to call it as the Sherrall Braves. Speaking of Sherrall Braves, they closed out Macby last night, 48-7. What do you think about the Sherrall Braves this year and where they might go?
Well, usually when it comes down to the Marlboro and Sherrall game, most of the time you can really throw the stats and the records out of the window. That game's such a big rivalry because usually it's a lot of people you see at the grocery store, you see at Walmart, could be your next door neighbors. You usually work with those guys and a lot of trash talk, but it's just that's a big game where both teams is full of pride and you really hate to lose to the other guy because you're gonna have to hear about it for a whole year before you get a chance to play them again. So I really look forward to that game every year. I got a lot of friends on that side. As well, Devin, you work over there in Sherrall. You now don the Brave colors. Well, I'm over here still in the black and gold of the Bulldogs. So, like I said, that thing that really hits home. Is we're living proof of that. But yeah, I pull for those guys. I got good friends. Me and Andy Poole's been Coach Poole's been friends for a long time, man, and I respect that guy a lot. And I really look forward to a really good game. Hope nobody has any major injuries really in the outcome.
Speaking of AP, Andy Poole, he returns a big junior class, big junior heavy team this year in the football team. They bring back their senior college quarterback, Caden Thomas, 4 years, passed for over 2,000 yards last year, and really turned it on in the playoffs last year. And I've seen him grow as a major runner when he has to scramble out the pocket and get outside the pocket and use his legs. Last night he went for over 100 yards passing. Didn't get a lot of yards because they had a lot of defensive turnovers, and they got to stay on their side of the 50 and score lots of offense. And was actually taken out at halftime because they didn't have to use the starters. Nick Gordon had a good night last night, as I seen. He had 2 or 3 touchdowns with a big major 75-yard punt return. Nick's an underrated, undersized guy that can play at the next level. What do you think about Nick Gordon?
I think Nick he he puts on a little weight, man. He grows a little bit. I think Nick is a D1 talent. If somebody will see him and give him a shot, I know he's been to some big camps and he's got some looks. He just ain't had that one breakthrough offer. I think once if he gets that first D1 offer, I think more will come because usually that's how it works. If somebody sees another team's offer the guy, they'll take a harder look. So we need to look and see what we're missing here. But Nick definitely has the talent and the ability to play. He has the ability to play D1 ball. It's just all about the right person seeing you and somebody getting you the opportunity. And I really think he can produce at the next level.
Speaking of the offensive side of the board, Braves do return a 3-year starter and running back, Justin Juice Joint, that had a tremendous season last year until he had some injuries in the playoffs. But really, I see him to have his breakout year this year. And Juice, I think the major thing for the Terrell Braves going to be this year is up front. If they can hold their own with the offensive line, I think the Braves can go wherever they want to go. I think they're destined for wherever the ceilings, wherever they can go. Speaking of the defense for the Braves, Crawford Poole, Anthony Strong, Brennan Price, Austin Adams, you name it, Terrence Blackman. They got defense guys, and they actually got bigger, faster, stronger this offseason. I watched. They got guys that can fly through the ball. What do you think the biggest thing about holding your own on defense and holding guys at no point?
Well, if you want, I think Terrell, they come out and did what I expected them to do last night in that game against McBee. I think McBee's a little overmatched in that contest. This coming up week, they'll be a litmus test really for both teams, Marlboro and Terrell. Usually, if Terrell's always got almost the same, just as good of athletes as Marlboro, usually that game's won in the trenches. Whichever team better on the offensive defensive front usually wins that ball game. And I haven't had a chance to see Sherrod. Maybe you have. I don't know what kind of size they got on the offensive line or defensive line, but that's going to be the key matchup. That's what I going to look forward to going into that game. And like I said, usually whichever team can get the advantage there, that's usually who wins that ball game.
I expect a low scoring defensive game next week. Maybe who can score the first few touchdowns and set the tone early, put pressure on other teams, and come out on top. What's your prediction of the score prediction for next week's game?
If I had to say right now, um, Marlboro's got a lot of talent on offense, man. I look for Stroud to hold them down early. I think Marlboro, if they can get a couple of turnovers, I really think I say Marlboro 27-17. I maybe not 20. I say 27 because we're probably going to miss the extra point because I think our kicker's still hurt. I don't know when he'll be back. We're going for two pretty much every time last night. So I'm gonna say 26 or 27-17. I think Marlboro scores late in the fourth quarter and makes it a two-score game and pulls it out.
I think, man, it's going to be a close game. I'll probably go, I say 27-20 is my score prediction. But I just know Marlboro travels deep and has a lot of players. So they're a bigger school, obviously. So they travel deep and have deep depth chart of players that they can just run out there. And Like Sherrod, on the other hand, some guys had to play both sides of the ball in previous years. This year, I think they actually had some new guys step in and want to play football and got them built to the size and their ability to play at the varsity level.
Yeah, guys playing both ways can really hurt you, especially early in the season when it's hot. You have to really guys catching cramps. You have to really need to get people sub in and out, man, to try to keep your people fresh. And yeah, if you ain't got the numbers, that really hurts teams. And I think, like I said, more so early in the year when it's really hot, man. It's hard to play 60, 70 snaps a game on both sides of the. I never get a chance to come off and catch your breath. And like I said, I know Terrell likes to do that, and it usually pays dividends for him later in the season because you got all your athletes on the field. But early in the season, it can be kind of detrimental. But like I said, I look for a good game, man. Both side stands will be packed. It'll probably be a sold out contest, and one you definitely don't want to miss if you're close to the Terrell area next week.
Like you heard it, folks. If you're in the area, the local PD area, that's a top high school week one matchup to show up for next week. It'll be Friday night at 7:30 at the Milk John in Sherrod, South Carolina. Speaking of keeping on going on with the rivals, we'll close out that rival. We'll go on to Scotland next week, going on the road to Richmond County of the Raiders. What you got? What you got? Any takes on that?
It's always tough to win in Richmond. I played there several times. Actually, we never beat Richmond home or away. We played some good close games. My senior year, we had them. I thought we had them. It was 0-0 going into half. We had the ball with 4 seconds before the half, and instead of just trying to run the clock out, we decided to punt. They blocked the punt, running back for a touchdown. We end up losing 10-0. But that was a really good Richmond team that went on to probably, I think they won the state championship that year. They had Michael Waddell, who went on to play at North Carolina and play for the Tennessee Titans, first round draft pick. So that's always a tough place to play, man. I think Richmond had Scotland's number for a while, but I think Scotland did end up knocking them off last year, if I'm correct. So that's a big rivalry game, and it usually goes back and forth. I think Richmond usually wins several in a row, and then Scotland will win a few in a row. But that's always back and forth, and it's always a toss up when those two play.
That's always been a here local rival around here, just on the border right there in Laurinburg and Rockingham. That battle with a 74 battle is what they like to call it, or state line battle. Previously, Richmond and Scotland both have put guys in the college and in the NFL league. I know you played back in. I ain't want to bring your age onto the podcast, but you played with some guys, some big time prospects against them back in your high school time that played in the league. And what you think about how Scotland and Richmond have always been able to put guys in the league more than some of the South Carolina local teams?
Yeah, well, back when I played, like you said in the old days, Scotland was a much bigger school. I think they were a big 4A school, 4A school. But before we get into that, I do want to say prayers up from Scotland County's own Travian Robertson. Played at South Carolina. Now he is a defensive line coach at South Carolina. He got in a pretty horrible car accident yesterday, and he's recovering in the hospital right now. I just want to say prayers for him because he is local. Like I said, you will see him local in the community. Not long ago, I was eating at a local establishment, and he was in there with his family, and he was actually donating one of his South Carolina jerseys for them to hang up in their establishment. And he's a good guy, man. He's big, and if you look at him, he looks mean and stuff like that. And I'm sure he can be if you coach him, but he's really, really a good guy, man. He's one of the best people you ever want to meet. But just want to say prayers up from him. But other than that, like I said, he is one. He went on to play D1 football at South Carolina. He had another guy on the defensive line when he's at Scotland, Byron McKnight. He went on to play at South Carolina as well. I can remember Terrell Manning went on to NC State linebacker. Jamie Dees, who played against me, one of my good friends from Scotland. He went on. He played at Wake Forest. I think he had some time in the NFL.
Melvin Ingram was a
Yeah, he
big
played
time
at Richmond.
prospect from Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond had Melvin Ingram. He went to South Carolina as well. They had Tony Horn, Super Bowl champion with the Rams. He's from Richmond County. We had one more guy. I can't think of his name. Went to Clemson. He was a big time player. But they had Mike Thomas, went to North Carolina. He was one of the best football and basketball players around. So Richmond puts out talent all the time. Puts out talent. If you want to recruit, you need to be recruiting this area because both of those schools they always got some big time guys. We can't forget Zamir White still playing in the NFL right now. He's probably one of the best ones, and we totally left him out. That's just how good this area has been for putting out talent. But yeah, Zamir's big, and he went on to Georgia, dominant running back in high school. But yeah, these two teams. I mean, that's going to be a big time game, and there's probably guys on that team right now that we don't even know about that's going to be big time and probably end up in the NFL. So if you can get out of that game as well, that'd be a good high school football game to go watch next week.
That game next week will be at Raider Stadium at 7:30. If you're in the Laurinburg or Rockingham area and you love local high school football, you should definitely get out to tune that one out. Turn there, we'll come back over to South Carolina a little bit. Dylan went on the road and lost to Scotland last night, but they will be looking to rebound next week, Friday night at home against the Socrates Rays from Myrtle Beach. What is your take on Dylan and their goals and see where they can go this year with head coach Kevin Roller, who is from our area and is doing a pretty good job at Dylan from what we can hear?
I, I really look for Dylan to go on a roll. Um, that ain't gonna be nothing but a motivating factor from that game last night because they did have a big lead. I think they may have let the guard down, and then when they decided and figured out that Scotland wasn't going to give up, it was probably a little too late. And I don't know why expect anything less. I think Dylan will go on the roll, and even though they play us tomorrow, Dylan may not lose another game the rest of the regular season. They're going to be tough to beat, and I think, like I said, that's just a motivating factor. They got a freshman quarterback who looks like a senior out there. He looked really good last night. He put up some big numbers, but I don't expect anything less from Dylan, but to be one of the top two or three teams in the state in 3A. So they're going to be tough. Like I said, if anything, that just made it tough for Marlboro playing Dylan because they're going to be pretty irritated.
Well, that conference there is a pretty risky conference this year. You can't have no letdowns on no weeks when you get into region play. You got Dillon, Marlboro, Waccamaw, Georgetown. Um, and when you get to the playoffs, you got to look towards the powerhouses, and these collegiate schools is what these people like to call them, or these charter schools. Oceanside Collegiate. Oceanside Collegiate went on a beat upset the Irmo Yellow Jackets last night, which is there in 5A. And Oceanside has a good returning quarterback from what I have seen. What do you think about the Land Sharks of Oceanside for this season?
And they're always going to be tough. I really don't know much about them as a team. I know they had a former Terrell Brave as the coach. He now where's he at?
He's at West Florence
He's
now,
at
Mr.
West
Chad
Florence.
Wilkes.
Yeah, he's now at West Florence, but he was a former coach of Oceanside, and I think he won a state championship there. They're always going to be right there in the running. Um, Great collegiate as well. I know that we have them on the schedule here at Marlboro.
I got those guys week 3 would be the week after the rival against Charlotte. That would be a big heated matchup in McAlpine Stadium with Ben Benefit.
Yeah, I think they'll probably hear some comments about recruiting and being a charter school and playing in 3A. But at the end of the day, you got to go out there and play ball, man. I think that'll be a really good test for Marlboro as well. We have played them in baseball a few times. They're always really good. Uh, anytime you play those schools like that, you're gonna have your work cut out for you.
I believe if you play a tough non-conference schedule, a hard non-conference schedule, it will benefit you and pay you more things in the end when you get into region play and more in the playoffs. Especially if you're a small school like Terrell. I look at their schedule; they play a powerhouse non-conference against Marlboro County, Conway, and they go on the road to River Bluff, which is a big 5A school, and they come back to their conference and they know how to handle it. They face a little adversity. They see what they can do in the trenches and crunch time and what they can do. But shifting over to the Pee Dee area of the game of the week, the Blitz game of the week from last night, which was in West Florence, South Florence and West Florence. Head coach Drew Marlowe, he took his team from South Florence over to West Florence to face off against Chad Wilkes and the West Florence Knights. Drew come out with a big, and the South Florence Bruins with a big win over the rival. South Florence has always been nationally ranked, coming off of a state championship last year with former quarterback and current quarterback of the Gamecocks, Lenore Sellers. What do you think about the Bruins heading into this season?
It looks like they're going to be another a tough out. Most people thought, Lenore's left 2 years ago. Jaden Sellers left last year. They also had Amari Adams. We ended up going to Clemson. They probably thought there was going to be a little drop off. And usually that game's a little bit tighter than it was last night. But it looks like South Florida's going to be a tough out. I think you said they travel down to Summerville this week. Yeah, that's going to be a really tough matchup. Then Northwestern, Fort Dorchester. It doesn't get any easier for them in the next few weeks. So if anything, they will be battle tested by the time they roll back into the conference. So if they can get through these next 3 or 4 weeks healthy, uh, somebody might be in trouble. You better look out. They're gonna go on a run.
Yes, South Florence always loaded. The past few years have been loaded with local talent. And I mean, you look at Lenore Sellers, Gamecocks, his brother Jaden Sellers, Gamecocks, Maury Adams, Clemson commit. The quarterback now is just like Lenore, dual threat guy, Messiah Jackson. They can is a good learner, really run the rock or pass it. He's got a cannon of an arm on his shoulder. Really can do whatever he wants whenever he needs to.
Yeah, like I said, the talent's always there at South Florence. It was just putting it together. Even if you go back, back to like I said, I'm falling back on my playing days again. But South Florence was always tough. I can remember they had Justin Watts, who ended up going to Clemson and actually playing receiver at Clemson and being a really good receiver. But he was a tough quarterback in high school, man. His dad was actually the coach when I played at South Florence. And anytime you got a coach's kid on the team, they usually one of the toughest kids on the team, man. And he really made it hard on you. He was a big kid at the quarterback position. But yeah, it looks like South Florence in line for another run to another state championship. If maybe injuries don't derail them, hopefully they stay healthy the rest of the year. And maybe South Florence looks to rebound this week. They go down to Myrtle Beach. That's going to be a tough game for them. So I think Myrtle Beach put up some big numbers last night as well.
Yeah, Murder Beach did put up a lot of offensive scores last night, but they will travel to West Florence. Actually, West Florence this Friday night in a non-conference big battle of two big schools going at it. But speaking of next week, the rival continues with the local schools. Don't you always love rival week?
I love it. Your little trash talk on both sides, man. As long as everybody just keeps it fun and doesn't take it too much out of hand, it can be really good. And that gets the guys pumped up and ready to play if they needed any kind of more motivation. But anytime you play a rivalry game, it really gets you going. So we get into another game last night that kind of surprised me was Wilson and Conway. Wilson pulled out the win. I really didn't know a whole lot about the Wilson team, but I think most people just from the outside looking in, they probably would have expected Conway to win that game. Marlboro actually plays Conway, so I was the score I was paying attention to, and was really kind of caught off guard when I seen the final outcome. But I watched some of the highlights. Wilson actually looked pretty good, man. They might be a team to look out for that nobody's been watching.
I believe if my thoughts are correct, I believe Wilson has a new first year head coach. The show the Wilson Tigers the way. Yeah, they come off a low scoring game of 13-9, which they must got a pretty good defense because Conway's always been good year in and year out with beach area talent. So what do you think about the Wilson Tigers?
Yeah, man, they're gonna be a team that I need to look a little more into. Like I said, I really didn't know a whole lot about them. Hadn't paid much attention, but usually there's always a team like that nobody's talking about before the preseason, and they take that put a chip on their shoulder, getting that little disrespect card, man, and they can usually make a run. I remember one year Marlboro was actually really good, and Wilson come in and we beat them in the regular season, and then we got back to in the playoffs, and Wilson come to Marlboro and beat us and put us out the playoffs, and they actually went to the state championship that year. So Wilson has the talent and has the ability, and they've done it before, so it can be done over there. So I'm gonna look more into those guys, man. I need to check one of their games out and see what they got over there.
Wilson is always loaded with talent year in and year out, but they are playing a hard non-conference schedule to get them ready for the conference. Speaking of next week, they go on the road to Gilbert. They go on the road to Dillon, host West Florence in non-region. Then they open up the region with Lakewood, Hartsville, Crestwood, Lower Richland, South Florence, and Donaldson. You can't really have a sleep week or lay down or just let anybody come in or go on the road and just not play your hundred ball.
Yeah, like I said, they'll probably use that getting no respect. They use that as a chip on their shoulder and be motivated. They're gonna catch. You can mark my words right now. They're gonna catch somebody sleeping that ain't gonna suspect Wilson to come in there. They're gonna overlook them and they're gonna beat one of the big time teams. I can feel it. It happens every year, and I think Wilson might be my sleeper pick for this year. That's somebody we might want to keep an eye out on.
Man, that's not a bad sleeper pick in the Wilson Tigers. Guys, we will have our picks for the championship, who we think is going to make it and who's not, who's in, who's out, sleeper picks, and on the next and up and coming podcast. Speaking of looking for next week, we got bunch of rivalry matchups next week. We will try to have a special guest for you guys on here Thursday night, the head coach of the Braves, Andy Poole. And I look forward to next week's rival matchups, man. What about you?
Yeah. I need to send a text to Coach Poole. Try to get this little back and forth started. We usually pick and play with each other, and it's I'm just wanting to see, waiting if he's gonna send the first shot, or if it's gonna be me. I'm gonna give him another day or so, and I'll see what happens there.
Yeah, these rivals is always fun, and as long as everybody keeps it clean, at the end of the day, 'cause you can't lose no sleep over the rival games. It's come and go year in. Some teams are talented more than some others. You might get a team back in the next sport in the spring or the basketball season, and so I think next week's gonna be a good week for everybody. I love rival week. I love to see the jokes and the laughter, and well, I love to see the town come out for a good rival game. What about you?
Yeah, I just like I said, I'm a bulldog through and through, but so I really want Marlboro to win the game. But like I said, I really want both teams to come out of this thing healthy next week, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Just for bragging rights, it's we're 3A, Charles 2A, so not going to face each other in the playoffs. We're not going to keep each other out of the playoffs. So like I said, I just want a good, clean game. Everybody come out healthy, and hopefully the Bulldogs win in the end. But that's about all I got, guys. Devin, you want to make some last comments before we wrap this thing up?
That's about all I got, guys. Get out to a game. Show these local teams support and support our podcast. And you can follow us on here on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. As we look forward to seeing you guys from next Thursday night about 7 o'clock with head coach of the Sherrall Braves, AP Andy Poole. Thanks, guys.